An original podcast from podlatino.com.
There's a kind of strength that makes no noise. It doesn't thunder, it doesn't strike, it doesn't need to prove anything. It's the kind of strength that calculates before it moves, that watches before it speaks, that builds where others destroy. In the world of the Greek gods, that strength has a name, a shape, and a story. It's called Athena. Among all the gods of Olympus, Athena holds a singular place. She's not the most powerful in terms of raw strength. She's not the most feared for her storms, nor the most celebrated for her romantic conquests. She is, above all else, the wisest. And in Greek mythology, that makes her one of the most important, most respected, and most enduring figures in the entire pantheon. But before we can understand who Athena is, we have to tell the story of how she came into the world. And that birth is unlike anything else in the history of Olympus. It all begins with Zeus, the king of the gods. Zeus was powerful, ambitious, and also, like all great rulers in myth, deeply human in his fears. One of those fears had a name: Metis. Metis was a remarkable figure. She wasn't remembered for her beauty or her physical power, but for something far more valuable: her intelligence. She was shrewd, thoughtful, capable of seeing what others couldn't. Some called her the wisest being in all the ancient world, and Zeus admired her so deeply that he chose her as his companion. But Zeus's admiration came with something darker underneath: fear. There was a prophecy, one of those warnings that no one in the Greek world could ignore, which said that the children of Metis would grow more powerful than their father. For Zeus, that was unacceptable. He had fought too hard to rule Olympus. He had faced his own father, Cronus, to free his siblings and claim the sky. He wasn't about to let fate repeat itself from inside his own family. So Zeus made a decision that can only be understood in the language of myth. He swallowed Metis, not as an act of cruelty, but as an attempt to contain the very thing he feared most. By doing so, he believed the wisdom of Metis would remain safe inside him, that the prophecy couldn't be fulfilled, that the future was under control. But wisdom, as the Greeks well knew, cannot simply be locked away. Time passed, and Zeus began to feel something strange, a pain unlike anything he had ever experienced, not the exhaustion of battle or the weight of a difficult decision. This was something internal, persistent, growing with a force that wouldn't let up. The pain was coming from inside his head, and it grew more intense with every passing moment. The gods of Olympus didn't know what to make of it. A god suffering like this was something outside the ordinary. Then Hephaestus arrived, the god of fire and the forge, the most skilled craftsman among all the divine beings. Hephaestus, who understood matter and transformation better than anyone, did the only thing that could be done. He struck Zeus's head with his hammer. It wasn't an act of violence. It was an act of release, like when a rock gives way and a spring that has been waiting to emerge finally breaks free. And from that strike, Athena was born, not as an infant, not as a small and fragile child. She was born fully grown, completely formed, dressed in brilliant armor and holding a spear. Her arrival shook Olympus. The gods stepped back for a moment. The sky rang out, and Athena, without a single word of introduction, was simply there, whole, calm, and radiant. That birth is more than a striking image. It's also a symbol. Athena didn't need to grow up or learn. She was, from the very first instant, everything she would represent forever: complete wisdom, active intelligence, thought made real. She had emerged from the head of the most powerful god, not from his impulsive heart or his warrior's arm. She came from thought itself. The armor she was born wearing was no small detail either. Athena is a warrior goddess, yes, but her relationship with war is entirely different from that of Ares, the other great god of combat in Greek mythology. Ares represents brute force, the fury of the battlefield, violence that ignites on its own and burns itself out on its own. Ares fights because he loves to fight. The outcome, more often than not, is beside the point. Athena is something else entirely. She represents strategy, planning, war approached with a clear head and a defined purpose. She doesn't fight for the pleasure of combat, but to protect, to defend what is genuinely worth defending. She's the goddess who stands beside heroes who think before they act. That's why, in Greek myth, when a hero faces a truly difficult challenge, it's often Athena who appears at his side, not to fight for him, but to help him find the way forward. But Athena is far more than war and military strategy. She's also the protector of the arts, of craftsmanship, of everything human beings create with their hands guided by their minds. Pottery, weaving, sculpture, architecture, all of those forms of making and building fall under her watchful gaze. Because for Athena, intelligence isn't only power, it's also the capacity to create, to transform, to leave something behind in the world. Her most recognized symbol is the owl, a nocturnal creature, silent, that sees clearly where others see nothing at all. It doesn't choose noise or unnecessary movement. It watches, waits, and acts at precisely the right moment. It's hard to imagine a more fitting symbol for a goddess whose power lives in the precision of thought. There's another symbol closely tied to her story, though in a different way: the olive tree. And to understand why the olive matters so much in Athena's story, we have to tell one of the most famous tales involving her. In the early days of the Greek world, there was a city growing on a rocky hill overlooking the Aegean Sea. It was a young city, but full of promise, and two gods wanted it for themselves: Athena and Poseidon, the god of the sea. Both wanted to be its protector, to give it their name, to receive its devotion. Since they couldn't settle it by force, they agreed on something more thoughtful. Each would offer a gift to the city, and the people would choose whose gift was more valuable. Poseidon went first. He struck the rock of the hill with his trident, and from the ground burst a spring of water. Powerful, forceful, deeply impressive. It was a gesture full of might, a demonstration of Poseidon's command over water and the depths. But the water was salty, useless for drinking or for irrigating the land. Then came Athena. She pressed her spear into the ground, and where the tip touched the earth, an olive tree grew. It wasn't a spectacular gesture. There were no tremors, no overwhelming visual display. But that tree could give oil for cooking and for lighting the night, fruit to feed a family, wood for building, and it could live for centuries and keep producing. It was a gift designed for everyday life, for the long future of an entire community. The people of the city chose the olive tree. They chose Athena, and from that day on, the city carried her name, Athens. Poseidon, some versions say, wasn't entirely pleased, but the decision had been made. Athena's wisdom, her ability to think about what a city truly needs, had proven more powerful than the spectacle of the sea god's waters. That moment captures something essential about why Athena is still remembered long after the Greeks stopped building her temples. She's not the goddess who wins through intimidation, or the one who impresses with thunder. She's the one who understands the value of what is useful, what is lasting, What sustains a full and meaningful life? The olive tree doesn't dazzle in the first moment, but it feeds people for generations. And maybe that's the quietest and most lasting idea that Greek mythology offers us through her. That wisdom doesn't always arrive dressed in spectacle. Sometimes it arrives calmly, with deep roots, ready to bear fruit long after the noise of others has faded away. The strength that thinks, that protects, that builds with patience, is the strength that endures. It's the one that leaves something standing when everything else has passed.